calls the coming kingdom of God. Okay, now let's make sure everyone understands, in case you have not been exposed to the prophecy before. Daniel chapter 9, verse number 27, prophesies a peace agreement between Israel and the Palestinians. This peace agreement is called the confirmation of the covenant, and the peace agreement will do the following things. Number one, it will establish a Palestinian state in the West Bank. That's the area called biblical Judea and Samaria. That's the territory Israel possessed during the 1967 war after Israel had been attacked by Jordan. So there's going to be a Palestinian state created, and it will happen as a result of this agreement. Number two, there's now 800,000 Jews living out there in what they call the occupied territories. These 800,000 Jews have to either move or else remain there as a Jewish minority under the new Palestinian state. According to the prophecy of the Bible, many of the Jews are going to stay there, living in the area called Judea or the West Bank. Furthermore, this agreement is going to place the Temple Mount under a sharing arrangement so that both Jew and Gentile will be able to worship there. The Bible even says that a Jewish temple will be built there and animal sacrifices will be resumed. So all these things are prophesied. However, one issue will remain unsettled as a result of this agreement. And that issue that's unsettled will cause this agreement to be a temporary agreement or an interim agreement rather than a permanent agreement. The unsettled issue will be the control over Jerusalem. The Palestinians say, we've got to have East Jerusalem as our capital. They give no reason for it. They just say, we must have it. The Jews say, wait a minute. We have decreed the unification. We annexed East Jerusalem in 1980. It has always been our capital for the last 3,000 years. It's never, ever been the capital of any other state in all of history. Why do you have to have it? We're not surrendering it. This is the place where our God chose to put his name. This is the place where our first temple stood, our second temple stood. And no, we're not going to surrender any of Jerusalem. Well, that's going to be put on hold. Rather than torpedo the whole agreement, whoever ends up implementing the agreement will say, let's go ahead and create the Palestinian state. Let's go ahead and determine the borders, except for the Jerusalem issue. Let's go ahead and solve the Temple Mount dispute. And then we will revisit the Jerusalem issue 7 years later. It appears it will be a 7-year agreement. Now that's basically what the prophecy says is going to happen. Oh, by the way, all of those points have been discussed by people who don't even know what the prophecies say. But already it's been discussed that when Judea Samaria becomes a Palestinian state, they've discussed, what do we do with all these Jews that are out of here? The Prime Minister of the Palestinians actually stated, well, you know, they could stay, they could live as a Jewish minority in the Palestinian state. After all, there are 1.6 million Arabs living in the Israeli state as an Arab minority. Why couldn't we have 300,000 or 400,000 Jews living under the newly created Palestinian state? Well, that's actually going to happen. The way we know it's going to happen is because Jesus said 3.5 years after the peace agreement is finally concluded that there will be many Jews living out in the area called Judea. That's the name of the West Bank. It's the biblical name. And he said that 3.5 years after the agreement, something would trigger Palestinian anger and they would begin to slaughter the Jews living among them. Here's the way Jesus said it exactly. This is Matthew chapter 24. He said, when you see the abomination of desolation, then let those which be in Judea flee into the mountains. If you're on the housetop, don't even come down to grab your clothes. If you're in the field, don't go back to get your billfold. Hit the ground running. For then will be great tribulation, such has never been before, no, nor ever again shall be. So Jesus foresaw these Jews living in the hostile territory out in the area of Judea and warned them that they would have to escape for their life. So we know for certain that there will be Jews living in Judea. Well, that's exactly what they discussed. Look, let them stay here. We will respect their property rights. They can keep their businesses, and they can live as a Jewish minority under the Palestinian state, just like there's an Arab minority living under the Jewish state. That's what's going on right now. Okay, now let's go on and see what is developing right now, the latest developments that are happening over the next 2 weeks. France, in its desire to be a player in the Middle East, has said, look, we're not going to get a deal done. You've tried repeatedly. Face-to-face negotiations, it's not working. Israel is too strong, the Palestinians are too weak, and therefore the Palestinians don't believe they can get what they think they have to have, and they want to appeal to the United Nations, to the world community. So France has decided to invite 20 major nations to Paris on May the 30th for a Middle East peace summit. Now, the purpose of this summit will be to define the parameters of a peace settlement. To prepare for this summit on May the 25th, this is 5 days prior to the ministerial meeting, the quartet is expected to issue a report on the situation that will be the basis for some of the work that will be done during the Paris talks on the 30th, the foreign minister of France said. Now, I want to pause there a moment to remind you what the quartet is. Back about 10 or 15 years ago now, I think it's been 15 years, I believe it was 2002, the big powers got together, the United States, Russia, the European Union, and the United Nations got together and said, look, the Palestinians and the Israelis can't make peace. We're going to put together a peace deal for them and insist that they accept it. Well, they did. However, Israel said, we accept it with 18 reservations. And the Palestinians said, oh, sure, we accept it, but they never did. So everything got stuck there. The quartet has been working since that time repeatedly to try to get a peace deal. Mr. Tony Blair was special envoy to the Middle East. He actually maintained a residence in Israel for 2 years running while he worked on all this, but to no avail. So that's what's been going on to this point. So the quartet, which stays right on the cutting edge of these things, says we're going to give you a report before you go into this meeting to serve as somewhat of an outline for your discussions. Then the plan is, after they put together the parameters for what they think it should look like, then a larger international peace conference will then be held either later in the summer or in the early fall. Now, the purpose of this conference is going to be to finalize an agreement. Now, the Palestinians and the Israelis are not going to be invited to the summit on May the 30th. However, they will be invited to the big international conference because ultimately they will have to be there to participate in the debate, in the discussion, in the negotiations. If they could pound out an agreement, then when the UN General Assembly comes together in September, which is the annual General Assembly meeting, then they would officially adopt this new plan for implementation. Now, that's where we are. If all of that would come to pass, then the final 7 years to Armageddon would begin yet in 2016. Now, will it happen? I don't know. There's going to be this deal. The only question is, will it happen in 2016? I suspect perhaps that it will not, although the pressures are building, pushing all this. That's what's provoking the French activism The foreign minister of the French, Jean-Marc Ayrault, was in Israel on Sunday. He went there preparing for this meeting, and he met Sunday, which was yesterday, of course. He met with both Netanyahu and Abbas, trying to talk to them about why they should cooperate with this. Hey, we only want to help. We only want to bring peace. You all have been fighting. You've had Intifada number 1, Intifada number 2. Lately, you've had the knife Intifada. It's time for it to stop. Furthermore, this week, John Kerry, our Secretary of State, also called and spoke to both of them by phone, both Netanyahu and Abbas. Okay, now, there's a lot moving here. The reason I'm saying these are not normal times is because for a month or so now, we keep getting reports that Netanyahu has been holding secret negotiations with Labor's Isaac Herzog in an attempt to form a unity party. Now, let's pause here because I want to make sure you understand the situation. Netanyahu won the last election, but he didn't have a majority in the Knesset, so he had to put together a government with 2 or 3 other parties. Well, he did. He put together a government with the Israel My Home Party and several other factions. And these other factions are right-wing and conservative by Jewish standards today. They are absolutely against a compromise. They're against creating the Palestinian state. They say, look, in the Bible, the West Bank, Judea, Samaria, that's our promised land. That's where Bethlehem is. That's where Jericho is. And all the other biblical sites. This is our promised land that God promised our father Abraham 4,000 years ago. And he also warned us, do not sign treaties or covenants with the people of the land, utterly drive them out. If you don't do it, they will be thistles in your eyes. They will be thorns in your sides. So the people who really believe the Bible, they say, we can't do this. But Netanyahu is more pragmatic, if you can call not believing God and not believing the Bible being pragmatic. He says, well, yes, it is our promised land. However, we have to face reality. We have 2 peoples living in this land. We're going to have to share it. And Netanyahu actually made a speech in 2009. It's called his Bar Ilan speech because it was given at Bar Ilan University. This was in 2009, and he stated that he understood and that Israel understood that there would have to be a 2-state solution. Well, that's what the United States, George Bush, Barack Obama, Bill Clinton, that's what they have been pushing ever since. Okay, now there's some questions. Will the United States attend? Israel is saying we're against it. Now let's talk about why Israel's against it first. If Netanyahu wants a 2-state solution, if they want to finally get peace, because let me tell you, Israel is weary of the continual violence. They would like to quit sending their daughters and sons off to war to fight, and it's been a fight for 100 years now. They'd like for it to be over. So there is a genuine desire for peace among Israelis. Many of them don't believe they can get peace with the Palestinians because they don't think the Palestinians will ever be satisfied until the nation of Israel is totally destroyed. Nevertheless, if it could happen, they would love to have peace. Consequently, Netanyahu has been negotiating with the Labor Party because Labor is all for trading land for peace. So the present partners in Netanyahu's coalition government, they're against trading land for peace. If Netanyahu tried to do the deal right now with the present government structure, they would topple his government and he would not be successful. So he has been negotiating behind the scenes to try to get a deal done with the Labor Party, which favors trading land for peace, favors stopping the settlements, and even Labor probably favors sharing Jerusalem. So Netanyahu is quietly negotiating behind the scenes with Isaac Herzog, who's the leader of the Labor Party, to get a deal. Now, in a little while, I'm going to read to you what Herzog says would be his conditions for entering Netanyahu's coalition. The others would end up dropping out, so that when it came time to ratify the deal that Netanyahu would agree to, that it would be able to pass with the necessary majority vote in the Israeli Knesset. Now, ladies and gentlemen, hear me carefully. Netanyahu's presently against the initiative, but he's been talking behind closed doors yesterday with the French foreign minister. The first thing he said was, well, we're not in favor of your summit because it says nothing about Israel being a Jewish state. Now, the Palestinians have said, oh, sure, we recognize Israel's right to exist. And Netanyahu says, as a Jewish state, and Abbas says, oh, no, because the Palestinians say, once Israel exists and we make peace with Israel, we've got 1.6 million Arabs in there, and we have children much faster than the Jews, so it's only a matter of time until there will be more Arabs in Israel than Jews. We then will vote in an Arab prime minister, and we will now have the Jews in the minority. We will rule all the Middle East again. That's their concept and plan. Well, the Jewish people know this very well, so they say, when we get this deal, it must specifically say that the nation of Israel is a country for the Jewish people. Now, the Arabs say, oh, that's racist. How can you say that it must be a Jewish state? I mean, that would be like the United States of America saying we're a Christian nation. Now, we've said that for many years, but then President Obama came along and said, oh, no, we're not a Christian nation. And no one was very surprised because his name, after all, is Barack Hussein Obama. His father was a Muslim, and he's very pro-Islamic. As a matter of fact, his first speech out of the country in Cairo, Egypt in 2009, he made the statement that the call of the imam to prayer in the evening is the most beautiful sound on the face of the earth. At that time, I thought, whoa, wait a minute. Is he really a Christian like he says? Because, you know, many Muslims claim, oh, you can't be a good Muslim unless you're first a good Jew and a good Christian, because we believe in Abraham and we believe in Moses and we believe in Jesus. We just believe there's one more prophet, Muhammad. He's the last prophet. So is this the kind of double talk that's being entered into here? I don't know the answer to that. It didn't help any when President Obama was interviewing on one of the talk programs, and Stephanopoulos was the interviewer, and Obama slipped and said, my Muslim faith, and Stephanopoulos said, you mean your Christian faith? And he said, oh yes, my Christian faith. And now this was after he already said that the call to prayer, the call of the Arabs to pray to Allah in the evening is the most beautiful sound on the face of the earth, and now he slips and says, my Muslim faith. So it planted all kinds of doubts, and I'm not going to enter into that discussion right now. I'm simply saying to you that President Obama said, we're not a Christian nation, but we've been built on Judeo-Christian values since the beginning. And I think we should be able to say we're a Christian nation. All of our laws, our Constitution is based on the Ten Commandments, on Judeo-Christian values, and that's what we are. But the people, as soon as Donald Trump says, look, we've got to stop all these Eastern religions coming in here, they are changing the Judeo-Christian values upon which this nation was built, and ultimately we will cease to be a Judeo-Christian country if we don't stop this and get this under control. Well, of course, Obama, among others, screamed to high heaven and talked about racism. Trump's been accused of racism because he wants to preserve our character as a Judeo-Christian society. Well, that's the same critical attitude that's toward Israel when they want to be a Jewish society. The Palestinians say, oh, that's racism. Well, anyway, that's one of the objections. Now, the other objection is UNESCO, with the United Nations, just passed a resolution within the last week or two where they talked about the Temple Mount, but they didn't call it the Temple Mount. They call it the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and they never referred to the Jewish rights to the Temple Mount one time, didn't call it the Temple Mount, and they even referred to the Western Wall as the Al-Barak Wall, which is what the Arabs call it. Well, the Jews said, wait a minute, you passed a resolution at the United Nations and France voted for it. And now they're saying to the French Prime Minister, you did that, you didn't recognize the Jewish right to the Temple Mount. And our first temple stood there, our second temple stood there. That's the holiest place on earth. That's where our God said he would put his name there. Well, the French said it was a mistake for us to vote against it, which will have to be corrected. Okay, so the French are attempting to bring these two sides together for this agreement. And the summit will be held on the 30th. Now, Israel wants peace. They're a little country surrounded by hostile neighbors. International pressure is coming down on them. The European Union this last year instituted a law that all products from the West Bank, what they call the occupied territories, could not be labeled from Israel. Therefore, they're labeled from the settlements so that people can refuse to buy them. So there's all kinds of pressure coming down on Israel right now to make a peace deal. And they're going to make one. The only question is whether this is the time for it. That's the reason I'm telling you that we may be getting ready to see the greatest prophetic fulfillment in 2,000 years. Now, I would rather think it'll wait a year or two, but the reason they have to do it now is because if this goes before the UN, the U.S. has absolute veto power at the UN Security Council. If it's a president that will truly stand by Israel, we can veto it. But many people think that Obama, his one last claim to fame, would be to pass a resolution forcing Israel to do what the world community says. And already Obama's been warning that he may do just that. If Israel keeps building settlements, he said we may be forced to not use our veto power. Now, the United States has used its veto power 42 times to protect Israel since 1971. 42 times. America has been Israel's protector. But there has never been a president that has been more willing to put the hit on Israel, put Israel in a headlock, and force Israel to do what the United States wants it to do. There's never been a president that's been willing to do that. That's where we stand right now. We're going to talk more about it and take your calls in the next segment of the program. By the way, if you're not yet a partner with Endtime Ministries, we need you now more than ever. We are in the end time. We are in the end time. Call us. 800-END-TIME is the number. 800-END-TIME.
When current events are found in Bible prophecy, it's astonishing. At Endtime Ministries, we are seeing them unfold every day, and so can you. We've put together a current events in Bible prophecy package for anyone who wants to understand like never before. Irvin Baxter and his dedicated staff have spent hundreds of hours of research and study, and in doing so have discovered that current events in Bible prophecy are telling the same story. These 13 DVDs will prepare you to be ready in this extraordinary time that God has destined you to live. Call 1-800-END-TIME or go to endtime.com and save over 20% when you buy the current events in Bible prophecy package.
All my life I have heard the statement, nobody's perfect. But one day Hebrews 10:14 caught my attention. It says, "For by one offering he hath perfected forever them that are sanctified." I attempted to reconcile this statement with what I had viewed as the many imperfections in myself. Could it be that there are human beings on this earth that God considers perfect? In You Are Perfect, Irvin Baxter explains what it means to be sanctified and why God sees those that are sanctified as perfect. This teaching has given people peace and security in their walk with God because of new understanding of how God sees them. This lesson is available on DVD, CD, in printed format, or even digital download. To tell you not what's wrong with you, but what's right with you. You are perfect. Call 1-800-END-TIME or go to endtime.com to get yours today.
If your radio station only carries the first 30 minutes of End of the Age, go to endtime.com to continue to listen to today's broadcast.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, we could be staring in the face this year of the greatest prophetic fulfillment in 2,000 years. I'm not predicting that because I think it may be another year or so before this happens, maybe even 2 or 3. I don't know for certain. But they're trying within the next 2 weeks to set in motion events that, if successful, would result in the greatest prophetic fulfillment in the last 2,000 years yet this year. I want to give you some excerpts from an article from the Jerusalem Post. The article is entitled, French Foreign Minister Says, New Peace Initiative Necessary to Stop the Deterioration of Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. This was published on the 15th, which of course is today. An international peace process is necessary to stop the Israeli-Palestinian conflict from deteriorating. French Foreign Minister Jean-Marc Ayrault told reporters on Sunday after separately briefing Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and Palestinian Authority President Mahmoud Abbas on his country's new initiative to jumpstart direct talks. The process is frozen, so there is a need for international intervention. That's the argument, because the situation is getting worse day by day. He told reporters at a press conference he held in Jerusalem on Sunday afternoon before boarding a plane for China. He spoke to them in French with the help of a Hebrew translator as he described a 2-step process that includes a May 30th ministerial meeting with some countries to be followed by a larger international peace conference in the fall. Ayrault said he hoped that Netanyahu would get on board with the process by the time the fall peace conference is held. Netanyahu told Ayrault that he opposed the idea of a French-led internationalized peace process, given that the only thing standing in the way of renewed negotiations was Abbas's refusal to hold direct talks. Netanyahu has called repeatedly saying, hey, I'm ready to talk. No preconditions, let's sit down, let's work it out together. Abbas has always said no, because Abbas believes he will get more from the international community because he knows the majority there is anti-Israeli and pro-Palestinians. He believes he can get a lot more favorable treatment from the United Nations and the international community than he can from direct negotiations. So consequently, Netanyahu is saying, look, there's nothing stopping us. I'm ready to meet Abbas today. But Abbas has steadfastly refused. Okay, continuing on. Netanyahu says, our experience with history shows that only this way did we achieve peace with Egypt and Jordan, and that any other attempt only makes peace more remote and gives the Palestinians an escape hatch to avoid confronting the root of the conflict. Now watch what Netanyahu says the root of the conflict is. The root of the conflict, which is non-recognition of the state of Israel. Netanyahu told his weekly cabinet after the meeting. They simply avoid negotiating with us as part of their desire to avoid resolving the root of the conflict, which is recognizing the national state of the Jewish people. Now let's make sure we get that. Netanyahu is insisting not only the recognition of the state of Israel, but the recognition of the state of Israel being the state of the Jewish people. That's the sticking point. That's the root of the conflict, according to Netanyahu. Now, continuing on, I know that Netanyahu does not agree. What I explained to him, this is the French foreign minister speaking, what I explained to him is that things will happen in 2 stages. First, the ministerial meeting, and then a peace conference with the Israelis and the Palestinians to find a way out of this frozen situation, Ayrault said. It is out of concern for Israel's security that France wants to push forward a new initiative, he said. The threats that could prevent a two-state solution from occurring have grown, he stated. The lack of progress has fueled frustrations, which in turn has fed a growing anger and is slowly killing any sense of hope, the foreign minister stated. The peace process must be renewed before it is too late, he said. On May the 25th, 5 days prior to the ministerial meeting, the quartet is expected to issue a report on the situation that will be the basis for some of the work that will be done during the Paris talks on the 30th, Ayrault said. Now, U.S. Secretary of State was on the phone this week. He called both Mahmoud Abbas, the head of the Palestinians, and Prime Minister Netanyahu, and he called them before Ayrault's visit because he wanted to talk to them. I'm telling you, there are heavy negotiations going on. The French foreign minister, and we're going to continue on here, told reporters on Sunday that the U.S.'s participation was important and that it would be willing to rearrange the date of its ministerial meeting to accommodate the schedule of U.S. attendees. What he's saying here, we want the U.S. here. The U.S. has got to be at this summit. However, if you try to tell us, oh, we've got a scheduling conflict, we'll change it because your attendance is absolutely vital and essential. Now, let me show you something else that's going on, because Netanyahu is in these negotiations with Herzog for this unity government, which would free him up to make this deal. That's the reason I'm saying to you it's serious. Let me read a couple of paragraphs from this article. Netanyahu is also enmeshed in negotiations with the Knesset's largest opposition party, Labor, which advocates a settlement building freeze and renewed peace talks. Rumors have swirled in recent days that party chairman Isaac Herzog is ready to sign on in exchange in part for being named Israel's foreign minister. Right now, Netanyahu has held on to the position of foreign minister. He's prime minister and he's also foreign minister. So he's kept the position, hoping someday to use it to entice Labor to join his coalition. Now, Herzog acknowledged the negotiations in May the 12th Facebook post, but said he was not yet ready to join the government. If I receive a mandate, now listen to this carefully. If I receive a mandate to stop the next campaign of funerals, to block the danger of international boycott, to bring back the United States and Europe as allies, to open negotiations with regional states, and to separate from the Palestinians into two states so as to stop the continual campaign of terror, then I'll know my hands are on the steering wheel, the Post read. That's the Jerusalem Post. So he's saying, you give me the power. I'm foreign minister. I'll do the negotiations. You commit to me that I have the power to do all these things, and I will join your government. Well, we're getting ready to see whether that's going to happen or not. Now, there's one more really interesting thing before I come to the phones. Mr. Martin Endtime has been the special envoy from Barack Obama to the Middle East for quite a long time now. Now, Endtime is Jewish himself, but he's a very liberal Jew, and he favors the trading of land for peace. However, as Endtime was on an interview with Al Jazeera News recently, he had quite a conflict with the interviewer. And the interviewer, well, let me just say, let me go ahead and read some of it to you. Endtime said, I am pro-Israeli, but I'm also pro-peace. Hassan, the interviewer, began by accusing America of not being an honest broker, noting the USA's close alliance with the State of Israel. Endtime defended that position, claiming that it was precisely because the U.S. is an Israel ally that it has been able to convince Israel to make concessions. The United States is pro-Israel, and that's what gives it its influence in the peace process, Endtime said. We are not neutral. We do not claim to be neutral. We have an alliance with Israel, but in order to achieve another interest that we have, which is peace in the region and legitimate national rights for the Palestinians, we need to be able to influence Israel. One particularly explosive clash, however, came when the two crossed swords over the so-called Clinton parameters. Remember that term, Clinton parameters, negotiated at the 2000 Camp David summit during Bill Clinton's administration. Endtime noted how then Israeli Prime Minister Ehud Barak had accepted the peace deal, which would have seen a Palestinian Arab state established in around 95% of Judea, Samaria, and Gaza, while Palestinian Authority Chief Yasser Arafat rejected it. Hassan accused Endtime of lying, noting that both the Israeli and the PA negotiating teams had tabled certain reservations to the agreement at one point. Endtime, however, insisted Barak accepted them. When Hassan shot back, no, he didn't, Endtime appeared to finally lose his cool. Excuse me, I was there when the fax came from Barak's office to my residence in Israel with the formal decision signed by the Prime Minister accepting the Clinton parameters, the former peace envoy said, pumping his fist emphatically. So don't tell me that I don't know what I'm talking about. Endtime did level many criticisms at Israel as well as during the program, echoing the sentiments of his former boss, U.S. Secretary of State John Kerry, in attacking Israel's continued expansion of the settlements as a key factor which screwed up the negotiations with the PA in 2014. His comments came on the same day as former President Bill Clinton, who blamed Palestinian Authority intransigence for scuppering the peace deal. I killed myself to give the Palestinians a state, Clinton told Democratic voters in New Jersey on Friday. I had a deal they turned down that would have given them all of Gaza. Now, this is the discussion taking place over the last 2, 3, or 4 days because it's coming to a head again. That's the reason I am telling all of you out there that we could see the greatest prophetic fulfillment in 2,000 years yet this year. Why do I say it would be the greatest prophetic fulfillment in 2,000 years? Because when this peace agreement is signed, it will mark the beginning of the final 7 years to the Battle of Armageddon. Now, let me put one clause in here. If the peace agreement that's signed does establish a Palestinian state, does allow Jews to remain there, living as a Jewish minority under the Palestinian state, which it will, according to the prophecy, and if it settles the ownership of the Temple Mount and puts it under a sharing arrangement under UN supervision, if the agreement does that, that is the agreement specifically prophesied in the Bible that marks the beginning of the final 7 years. You'll be able to go to your calendar, mark a big X. Final 7 years to Armageddon began today. Your call's next.
One day I was listening to End of the Age, much like you are now, when a commercial came on about the salvation package. It's a set of 4 DVDs in which Irvin teaches about topics like Nicodemus' question to Jesus, "What must I do to be born again?" I remember Irvin said in the commercial, "If you don't love the truth, don't get this because it will make you mad." Well, I was hungry for the truth, so I did get it, and I'm so glad I did. I'd been studying the Bible for many years, but learned there was more in the scriptures about what it means to be born again. When the disciples came to Jesus and asked, "What will be the sign of your coming and the end of the age?" Jesus said, "Take heed of false teaching, for many will come in my name and deceive many." Now I know what Jesus was talking about when he made that statement, and I won't be deceived. The salvation package changed my life and my eternity. I'm so thankful for that commercial I heard. That's why today I wanted to record one too, for someone out there listening, searching for the truth. You will find it in the salvation package. Get the 4 DVD set for $65 or the individual DVDs for $20 each.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, this is just one of those programs that almost takes your breath away. When we see a prophecy that's 2,500 years old, and we see all of the pieces coming together right now. And there are elements of this prophecy in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. Jesus Christ himself giving some of the details. In the most famous prophecy chapter in the entire Bible, Matthew chapter number 24, it's called the Olivet Discourse because it was given on the Mount of Olives. When we see all these things converging, and then we see current events marching straight towards prophetic fulfillment. Now, I've been through this before. I began to teach the Berlin Wall would come down in 1968. I wrote a book and published it in 1986. The Berlin Wall came down 3 years later in 1989. I was glued to the news that day as I witnessed the fulfillment of a prophecy, a major prophecy in the Bible. It was amazing. Now, here we are again. It's not happening today, but the next 2 weeks, they're going to try to set in motion the events that could result in it happening. That's what I'm telling you. Let's get the phones down. I'm going to try to get all of you if I can. Let's go to Shelby, first of all, calling from Texas. Hello, Shelby.
I'm here. I'm just curious about what's happening with the country and all in between Israel. After all, our country, from what I observed on your website, continues to back Israel in spite of the Oval Office's position.
Well, Shelby, what's happening is this. I'm really glad you asked, because right now it looks like the Obama administration is turning away from Israel and moving toward friendship with Israel's number one enemy, Iran. Iran is the number one supporter of terror, and Iran has repeatedly vowed that Israel will be wiped off the map. They recently tested missiles, and they wrote on the side in Hebrew, Israel will be wiped off the map. And yet, we alienated our friend Israel while cozying up to Iran. That's the reason so many people are asking the very question you are asking. But President Obama is not long for office. I believe the prophecies show we're going to have a major shift back to sanity, that the United States of America is in fact going to remain Israel's friend all during these end time, and also that America will pull out of the New World Order, that we will no longer be a part. Now, the New World Order is coming, the one world government is coming, it's prophesied in the Bible, but when it's depicted in the book of Revelation, the United States is not shown as being a part of it, which is a wonderful piece of news. So I do believe, matter of fact, I know all of the world is moving toward this globalism, toward this one world government situation. However, the United States appears to be on the brink of pulling back, and this next presidential election is going to have everything to do with that taking place. So that's what's going to happen, Shelby. And I will say to all of you out there listening today that we have a new DVD called America's God-Given Destiny. Now, we've shown before where the United States of America is specifically prophesied in the Bible. It's one of the most supernatural prophecies of all time. It's incredible, and it's so easy to understand. So we show that again in this tape, but we go way beyond that. Not only do we show where the United States is in the Bible, but we show what's going to happen to us. I take you to the scriptures and show you step by step, and also take you to many historical documents that show you what is coming. Now, we've tried to make this so that everybody can have access to it. For a donation of any size, you can go to endtime.com, click the donate button, and when you enter your donation, you will receive your password to download at no cost the DVD, America's God-Given Destiny. Now, there's even a better plan. If you have the means to do it and God would move on your heart to do it, and that better plan is this: we want to help the Jewish people because they're going to need a lot of help. They are facing the greatest time of tribulation ever. There's another Jewish Holocaust coming. So we've established a fund called the Another Jewish Holocaust Fund. And as long as we have left this artwork that we presently have on hand, we have a piece of art depicting the United States guarding Israel in the end time. If you would choose to make a donation of $1,000 to help Jews to move to Israel, there are right now about 5 million Jews that live outside of the United States and Israel. Those are the two safe zones for Israel in these end times. But there are about 5 million Jews, 1.6 million in Europe, and they all have to get out. Europe is going to be the power base of the Antichrist. The Jews have to get out as quickly as possible. Okay, so what we're doing, anyone that will donate $1,000 to help a Jewish person fly to Israel, be assimilated in the Jewish economy, learn the Jewish language, if you would donate that, not only are you going to receive this beautiful piece of art, you're going to get a physical DVD of America's God-Given Destiny. And beyond that, we're going to send you a letter for you to sign addressed to Dear Jewish Friend, and we will hand deliver that letter to those people that you help get out of Europe, get out of the other places around the world where they're going to be in danger. They're going to be slaughtered. There's going to be another Holocaust. It's going to be horrible. But if they will listen to the warning, and if they have the means to get out, we're going to help them get out, bring them to Israel, to the safety of Israel. And the Bible teaches those in Israel will be safeguarded from the Antichrist all during the Great Tribulation, all the way up to the time of the Battle of Armageddon. So if you would like to do that for a $1,000 donation, call us, 800 Endtime. Donate to the Another Jewish Holocaust Fund. We will send you your artwork, your letter, and your physical DVD. But to the rest of you, maybe you can't afford to do that, but yet you want to get the DVD, America's God-Given Destiny. Well, just go to endtime.com, endtime.com, donate any amount, any, and we will send you the password so that you can download America's God-Given Destiny. I'm saying to you, every American, matter of fact, everybody in the world, needs to view this DVD. It will allow you to see America's future between now and the Battle of Armageddon, exactly what's going to happen. So I certainly encourage you to do that. That's endtime.com, and click the donate button and make your donation, and you will get your password, no matter what size the donation is, for America's God-Given Destiny. Okay, right back to the phones now. Let's go now to Aaron calling from North Carolina. Hello, Aaron.
Daily Bar Station.
Hey, how you doing, Mr. Baxter?
I'm doing wonderful. Turn your radio off, Aaron.
Okay. I just had a quick question. I wanted to know. We know that the Antichrist is going to have access to a body, but I wasn't sure how was he going to be able to make that happen. How was he going to get access to one?
Well, Satan, when he's cast out of heaven 3.5 years before Armageddon, demons always attempt to invade human beings. We have many accounts of demon possession in Jesus' time, in the apostles' time, and there's strong evidence that Satan will personally embody a man. Now, this man will be a human being, he will be a politician, and he will have risen to world power by then. When Satan embodies him, Satan's number one goal is to be worshiped. He wants to cause human beings created by God to worship him. So he's going to, through the Antichrist, establish a world government, and he's going to institute the mark of the beast in an attempt to force every person on this earth to worship him. So the Antichrist is not going to be a supernatural being. He's going to be a human being, but a human being that will give himself over to the spirit of Satan. And then Satan will, apparently from the scriptures, dwell inside the Antichrist. And anybody that pledges allegiance to the Antichrist will then will be virtually worshiping Satan himself, and that's what's called the mark of the beast. It will result in the damnation of that person. Hope that helps you, Aaron.
Okay, I just wanted to find out because I wasn't too sure about if I wasn't mistaken. I thought Satan was an angel, not a demon. Demons and angels are two different things. That's what the scripture refers. I never heard of the scripture saying that demons and angels are the same thing.
Well, here's what we know for sure, Aaron. We know that angels are spirits. The Bible says that angels are ministering, the good angels are ministering spirits to us who are the heirs of salvation. So angels are spirits. And spirits are able to inhabit people. And that is apparently what is going to happen in the time of the Antichrist. The Bible does not specifically say that Satan will personally indwell the Antichrist. However, the Bible does say that anybody that worships the Antichrist, it will be considered worshiping Satan himself, and the result will be eternal damnation. So that's what's going to happen. Thank you very much, Aaron. Got to let you go now. Tell you what, I'm going to take one more really quick call. Jim from Indiana, what's on your mind, Jim?
Yeah, I was wondering, back in the history, Judah and Israel became two different countries. And the prophecy said that when they come back to be a country again, it would be one country and they'd never split again. That's one of the reasons they call them all Jews now. But I was wondering, is there any similarities between the borders and the fighting going on with the Palestinians and the similarity between when Israel and Judah was two different countries?
Yeah, actually there is. When the United Nations partitioned Israel back in 1947, when they had their partition vote, the area, the northern kingdom, pretty much became Israel. But Judah was still left. Matter of fact, they were going to turn that into a Palestinian state, but the Palestinians refused. They said, we don't want a state, we just want to drive the Jews out. We want to kill all the Jews. So consequently, it did not become a Palestinian state. But the area called Judea is the area of Judah, the southern kingdom. When the split happened after the death of Solomon, the northern kingdom, Israel, its capital was Samaria. The southern kingdom was Judah. Its capital was Jerusalem. And so with the 67 war, Judah and Israel were reunited. The territories were all brought back together, and they should not be separated, but they're going to be separated. Run out of time, Jim, I got to let you go. Nevertheless, let me quickly tell you before we go off the air, in order for you to understand, we're in the end time now. I'm not telling you the end time's coming, we're in it right now. For you to have a comprehensive understanding of the prophecies of the end time, you need our 14 DVD set. If you go through these 14 DVDs, the first one, United States, Great Britain, Russia, Germany in the Bible, many other things. If you go through these 14 DVDs, you'll know more about Bible prophecy than 95% of the graduates from theological seminary. You can get them for yourself right now by calling 1-800-END-TIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Our operators are there right now. They'll answer your questions. 800-END-TIME's the number. God bless you. See you tomorrow.
End of the Age is a production of Endtime Ministries. This broadcast will be available on our website, endtime.com, in the archives section. On our website, you'll also find more information about how current events are fulfilling Bible prophecy. To reach our operators, call 1-800-ENDTIME. That's 1-800-363-8463. Endtime Ministries is partner supported. We would like to say thank you to our partners who made this broadcast possible. To do what Matthew 24:14 said, to reach the world with the gospel of the kingdom.